wall, probably you mean that one won't go up and down, huh? Hey,
Thank you.
I have faith. The fellow who caused the most damage teaching the same idea, but, quote, scientifically, was none other than our hero of the last couple of weeks, because of his 200th anniversary, Charles Darwin. Most of us don't bother to actually read Darwin. We read a school secondhand account of what Darwin said, but if you go straight to the horse's mouth, you will discover that the human race is not evolving. A tiny fraction of the human race is evolving, mostly blonde-haired, blue-eyed people from Scandinavia, and the rest of the people are evolutionarily retards. I'll give you the citation. Is there anyone in here that has any Irish in their background? Let me see your hand. Oh, you're going to love this. This will not be the Darwin that you studied in high school. In Descent of Man, that's published in the U.S. in 1871, Darwin says very clearly that if the good stuff, you know, the Scandinavian blondes, interact with the bad stuff, and the Irish clearly are his leading candidate for the bad, but almost everyone else is bad stuff. Evolution will march backwards into the swirling mists of the dawnless past. Now, Darwin had a phenomenal reputation, not as a scientist, although he was getting one by 1871. Origin of Species had been published in 1859, but Darwin was a supremely wealthy man. Another fact that your high school biology books leave out as if it were inconsequential: a supremely wealthy man. He was the heir to the Wedgwood fortune, and Wedgwood was, you know, the primary social technology of his day. If you didn't own a set of Wedgwood, you were nothing. I mean, nothing. So Darwin spoke not to the public, not even to the scientific community. Darwin's associates were the kings and the queens, the dukes and the princes of Europe. So he had an immediate effect on, let me call them, the managerial classes of Europe and the United States. And he said, you've got to create structures that keep the bad protoplasm away from the good protoplasm. As a direct result of Darwin, we had an explosion in the elite private boarding school movement in the United States. We had, I think, 6 of those prior to Darwin, and we quickly ended up with 600. Say again?
I'm sorry.
Okay, so we had a phenomenal growth of what now is a common institution, the country club. We had elite sections in colleges, even non-elite colleges, and there must be a dozen other institutional protections against the bad stuff intermarrying with the good stuff. And it became one of the secret guiding principles of managerial logic at that time, and I do believe ever afterwards. In any case, this is what Lippmann saw entering the entrepreneurial wide open. I call it the open source method, genius of American education. So I'm going to start with telling you a different way that this was done and is being done now under our noses, but it isn't touching nearly enough of us. The school question of the moment is this: can we create more sensible uses for the time of America's young than sentencing them to bells and chair time and memory drills for 12 years? What might we do instead? What we might think about doing before we thought about specifics is making gigantic cracks in this Prussian machine. We can't abandon it because it's the leading employer in the United States if you factor in all of the collateral businesses that depend on schooling, like textbooks and driving the truck to deliver the textbooks, etc. The bologna makers and the final market for bologna. Yes. So I call the process that I think we need to evolve to, or devolve to, since we had it at one time. I call it open source learning. And rather than define that for you right away, I'm going to illustrate it at work with living examples. One of the examples which we won't be able to talk to, you have here, during a time of great political chaos in New York schools between 1975 and say 1982, phenomenal chaos. You couldn't make a movie about what the interior of Manhattan schools looked like. I don't mean ghetto schools. I lived in the Gold Coast, to the Upper West Side. Couldn't make a movie about it that anyone would believe. I mean, there were, well, there were ladies in them, so I can't say. Rapes on a weekly basis inside the schools, public displays of fornication, kids at the front door selling booze at an inflated price. So, but I'm going to show you some examples of open source at work right now in the world around you on a minute scale. The schooling we know of is a religious phenomenon. Its assumptions are based on faith, not on any fact that they produce superior results. It's a substitute, in fact, for religion, just as the Dutch philosopher Spinoza said that it would become. My first example of open source learning is an automobile mechanic who dropped out of junior high school at the age of 13. His name's Jonathan Goodwin, and if you're on the internet, you can Google the cover of Fast Company magazine for November 2007. And you'll be looking square in the face, the homely face, I might add, although my editor objected to me saying, I'm sure Jonathan wouldn't object, of a dirt poor kid from a Kansas farm family of 7 kids, drops out of junior high school at 13 and does what innumerable kids do and have done. He hangs out at the local garage. Can you see any future for Jonathan Goodwin? How on earth does he go from there in 20 years to the cover of Fast Company magazine? As he told Fast Company, after dropping out of 7th grade, he made a living rebuilding cars ruined in accidents. He bought the wrecks for a few bucks and made them, I'm quoting, good as new. That was my school, said Jonathan. Even as a teenager, Jonathan could see that technology already existed to get between 60 and 100 miles a gallon, 100 on an ordinary car, 60 miles a gallon on a Hummer. How about that?